On my wedding day, my fiancé was nowhere to be found. I called him over a dozen times. Each call hung up, until he finally answered. Are you out of your mind? Stop calling. Ally is at the hospital giving birth, and I have to be with her. I asked in disbelief. Ally? The ex-girlfriend who dumped you 3 years ago? Marcus must have sensed something was wrong, and his tone softened slightly. The wedding can be postponed, but giving birth is a major event. It can't be delayed. I hope you can understand. I hung up before he could finish. Later, when he learned the wedding hadn't been postponed, but that I'd switched grooms on the spot, he frantically sought me out, begging for another chance. The dial tone buzzed in my ear. The world didn't collapse. Instead, it became exceptionally clear. The hushed whispers of guests in the ballroom, the scent of fresh flowers, the heavy wedding dress on my body, every detail was as sharp as a knife's edge. He chose her, on our wedding day. I didn't cry. Tears are for those with regrets. I had none, only surging fury and icy resolve. I took a deep breath, tore off the elaborate veil, and said to my best friend and shocked bridesmaid, Sarah, do me a favor. Grace, don't do anything foolish. Sarah's voice trembled. Foolish? I forced a smile. Do I look like I'm about to do something foolish? I lifted the hem of my dress and strode towards the lounge. My parents and a few close aunts and uncles were there, their faces filled with panic and worry. Dad, Mom, aunts and uncles. My voice was so calm it surprised even myself. The wedding is off. My mother immediately stood up and hugged me. Grace, don't be upset. It's not cancelled. I interrupted her, my gaze sweeping over everyone present. It's a change of groom. The room fell silent. Sarah, I called out, get Arthur. Now, immediately. Arthur was a mutual friend of Marcus and me, and also one of the groomsmen today. More importantly, I knew he liked me, silently cherishing me for years. Before, I only had eyes for Marcus, purposefully overlooking Arthur's feelings. Now, that unspoken affection became my only weapon for a decisive strike. A few minutes later, Arthur rushed in, his handsome face etched with worry and confusion. Grace, are you all right? Marcus. Arthur. I looked straight into his eyes. Without preamble, will you marry me? Right now, in this ballroom. Arthur was completely frozen. He looked at me as if he didn't know me. His apple bobbed. His gaze shifted from shock to struggle, finally settling into a look of tender, desperate resolve. I do. He didn't ask why, didn't hesitate. Just those 2 words, heavy and firm. I turned to my utterly petrified parents and the wedding planner. Did you hear that? The groom is Arthur. The ceremony proceeds as planned. Go tell the officiant and guests now. Say it was all a joke to test true love. The planner's mouth fell open, but under my unwavering stare, she stumbled off to make the arrangements. My mother pulled me aside, whispering, Grace, this is utterly reckless. Arthur is a good boy, but you can't just do this out of spite. Mom, I squeezed her hand, my voice filled with unmistakable conviction. I'm not doing this out of spite. I'm taking control of my own life. Marcus abandoned me at our wedding. That would follow me forever, making me the subject of ridicule for the rest of my life. But if, at the moment of abandonment, I'm rescued by a far better man, then a joke will turn into a legend. Arthur. I looked at him. He deserves it. Arthur stepped to my side and bowed slightly to my parents. Mom and Dad, please trust me. I will be good to Grace. This isn't just a fleeting impulse. It's a dream fulfilled. His gaze was sincere and ardent. My parents exchanged a look, finally sighed, and chose to support me. An hour later, I stood in the wedding dress originally meant for Marcus, and Arthur wore his best man's suit. A bit ill-fitting, but he stood ramrod straight. We stood beneath the floral archway, facing a ballroom full of murmuring, curious guests. The officiant, trying to save face, smoothed things over with the lightest tone possible. Arthur held my hand, his palm warm and dry, filling me with an unprecedented strength. The ceremony was simplified. For the ring exchange, we used the original wedding rings. As slipped the ring onto my ring finger, he whispered, just for me to hear, I'll make sure you know that your choice today was not a mistake. I looked into his eyes and genuinely smiled for the first time. I know. The ceremony was complete. Scattered applause broke out, mixed with the click of cameras and hushed whispers. But I didn't care. I linked arms with Arthur, held my head high, and met the scrutiny of the crowd. Just then, the ballroom doors burst open. Marcus appeared in the doorway, panting, his hair disheveled, his suit askew, his face flushed from his frantic sprint and etched with incredulous horror. He saw me in my wedding dress, and Arthur, standing beside me in an ill-fitting suit but with a resolute posture. His eyes instantly turned red, like those of a cornered beast. "Grace, what are you doing?" Marcus's voice was like a boulder dropped into an already roiling lake. All eyes snapped from him to Arthur and me, the air thick with curiosity and tension. I felt Arthur's arm instantly tense. He instinctively stepped forward, positioning himself protectively between Marcus and me. I didn't back down. Instead, I gently patted Arthur's arm, signaling him to move. This battle, I would fight myself, right here, today, in front of everyone. I took a step forward, directly facing Marcus's face, contorted by rage and panic. My voice was surprisingly calm, even tinged with mockery. "Marcus, as you can see, I'm completing my wedding. And who are you?" Suppressed gasps and low chuckles rippled through the guests. Marcus's face instantly flushed crimson. He pointed at Arthur, his finger trembling. "Grace, are you insane? That's Arthur. He's my friend. You. What kind of sick joke is this? A joke?" I tilted my head slightly, the hem of my dress tracing a chilling arc with my movement. "After you hung up on me and abandoned all our guests and me on our wedding day, for your ex-girlfriend, do you honestly think anything could be more of a joke than your behavior?" My words lashed out like a whip, precisely shredding the flimsy excuse he was trying to maintain. More pronounced murmurs rose from the crowd. Marcus choked. His bravado faltered. He tried to explain, his voice softening. "Grace, listen to me. Ally is at the hospital. Her situation is critical. She needs me. It was a matter of life and death. We can reschedule our wedding. Can't you just try to understand?" "Understand?" I repeated the word, as if I'd just heard the most ridiculous joke in the world. "I understand you were desperate for your old flame, so I'm granting you your wish. I cancelled our wedding, so I didn't delay you from rushing to save a life. Isn't that understanding enough?" I paused, my gaze sweeping the room, ensuring everyone could hear my next words. "As for rescheduling, Marcus, you're mistaken. It's not a rescheduled wedding. It's a change of groom. From the moment you left for another woman, you and I, we were no longer us." Arthur reached out at the opportune moment, interlacing his fingers with mine. His voice was steady, carrying unmistakable authority. "Marcus, Grace is my wife now. Please mind your words and don't harass her." "Your wife?" Marcus completely lost control. Like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, he lunged forward a few steps, almost reaching us. "Arthur, I considered you a brother. How could you take advantage of the situation?" Arthur didn't give an inch. He even let out a soft laugh, tinged with pity. "Took advantage of the situation? No. I caught her when she needed it most. You, Marcus, you pushed her away yourself. The moment you chose to leave, you automatically forfeited all claims as a brother and a fiancé." Marcus was rendered speechless. He looked at me, then at Arthur, his eyes filled with the pain of betrayal and utter absurdity. He was like a cornered beast with no opponent, futilely flailing his fists, only hitting air. I gave him one last look, devoid of love or hate, containing only utter coldness and indifference. "Marcus, your ally and child are still waiting for you at the hospital," I reminded him, each word like an ice bead hitting the ground. "You're not welcome here. Security, please escort this man out." The security guard, who had been waiting nearby, immediately stepped forward and politely but firmly took Marcus by the arm. "Grace, you can't do this. You're lying, aren't you? You're doing this to spite me, aren't you?" Marcus struggled, turning to shout at me, a desperate sob in his voice. I didn't look back. Arthur put his arm around my shoulder and whispered, "We should go make our toasts." "My wife?" I leaned into his side, held my head high, and walked towards the next table of guests, meeting a mixture of shocked, admiring, and sympathetic gazes. Behind us, Marcus's frustrated roar echoed as he was dragged from the ballroom, his voice slowly fading, eventually swallowed by the music and chatter. The wedding concluded in a bizarre yet charged atmosphere. After seeing off the last guest, the lounge door clicked shut, and the world instantly fell silent. The opulent wedding dress felt like a heavy cloud weighing me down. I took a deep breath, then turned to Arthur. "Thank you for today." Arthur loosened his collar, the ill-fitting best man's suit making him feel a bit constrained. He looked at me, his gaze complex. No need to thank me. I just did what I wanted and needed to do. He paused. What are your plans now? First, deal with those media vultures outside. I gestured towards the door. I could faintly hear the wedding team and a few media reporters who insisted on staying to dig for dirt. Then, home. Which home? Arthur asked directly. I froze for a moment. Right. Which home? The new home Marcus and I prepared? It was filled with ghosts of the past. I didn't want to stay there for a second. My parents' house. I didn't want them to be troubled by me. Arthur seemed to see through my dilemma, saying calmly, if you don't mind, you can stay at my place for now. I have a spare room in my apartment. We're legally married now, and separate residences would invite gossip. He was very considerate. Since this play has begun, we have to see it through. All right, I said, without playing coy. Thank you for the trouble. After dealing with the minor matters at the ballroom and evading reporters, we got into Arthur's car. The city's neon lights flickered across our silent faces. My cell phone began to vibrate incessantly. The name flashing on the screen was Marcus. I immediately hung up and put it on silent. Soon, messages flooded in, one after another. Grace, I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. Ali's baby was premature, and the situation was unstable. I was in a complete panic then. How could you be so cruel? 3 years of us, and you just swap me out like that? Arthur doesn't truly love you. He's just pitying you. Wake up. Answer the phone. Let's talk face to face. You have to give me a chance to explain. I looked at the texts, my heart completely still. I even felt a slight urge to laugh. See? This was Marcus. Always convinced his actions were justifiable. Always blaming others for their lack of generosity. Arthur glanced at me. Do you need me to handle it? No, I said, turning off the screen. Let him be hysterical. The more he loses it, the more it proves how right I was today. The car pulled up to Arthur's apartment building entrance. Sure enough, Marcus was waiting there, haggard and distraught, still in his suit. He saw Arthur's car and immediately rushed over, pounding on the car window. Grace, get out. Let's talk. Arthur pulled the car to a stop, unbuckled his seatbelt with unhurried movements. He looked at me. Do you want to go out? I shook my head. No. Tell him I don't want to see him. Arthur nodded, got out of the car, and stood in front of Marcus. I watched them coldly from inside the car, through the window. Marcus, that's enough. Arthur's voice was muffled by the glass, but the steely edge in his tone was unmistakable. Arthur, get out of the way. I need to talk to Grace. Marcus tried to push him, but Arthur stood firm. She doesn't want to see you. As you can see, we're married now, so please stop harassing my wife. Arthur emphasized my wife with deliberate weight. Marcus recoiled as if stung. He stumbled back sharply, pointing at me in the car. His voice a choked cry. Grace, are you really this cruel? Are you just going to watch us fall apart like this? Get out here. I slowly lowered the window, revealing half my face, my gaze calm as I looked at him. Marcus, what was between us ended the moment you hung up on me. You look undignified right now. He froze, apparently not expecting me to be so calm, so merciless. And, I added, my voice low, yet clear enough for him to hear, regarding everything that happened at the wedding today. I don't want to see any distorted reports portraying Arthur and me in a negative light in the media. If they appear, I won't hesitate to release our call records and your dramatic story of ditching your wedding for your ex-girlfriend, exactly as it happened, to the public. Consider yourself warned. With that, I raised the window, shutting out his desperate, distorted face. Arthur got back in the car, started the engine, and drove into the underground parking garage. In the rearview mirror, Marcus's figure dwindled, eventually disappearing from view. Arthur's apartment was a minimalist modern style, cool-toned and meticulously clean. It almost lacked personal touches. He showed me to the guest bedroom, where the sheets and bedding were new. No one usually stays here, but the basic necessities are available. The bathroom is down the hall. You can use it first. His tone was neutral, as if arranging for a distant guest. Thanks, I said, putting down my small overnight bag, feeling like I was on a business trip, not my wedding night. An awkward silence filled the air. Between us lay an absurd wedding, a common enemy, and a thin, legally binding marriage certificate. Tonight, I began, and at the same moment, he said. About us. We both stopped. Arthur gestured for me to go first. Thank you for getting me out of that predicament tonight. And for taking me in. I carefully chose my words. I know this is very sudden. And quite absurd. We can set some ground rules. I'll pay half the rent and living expenses. And we'll split the chores. In front of outsiders. We'll act as a couple. But in private. We're just roommates. No interference. And we'll maintain our distance. I spoke clearly and calmly. As if at a negotiation table. Arthur listened intently. Then nodded. That's very reasonable. I agree. He paused. Then added. As for Marcus. If he tries to harass you again. Tell me. And we'll face it together. Okay. That first night. I lay in the unfamiliar bed. Listening to the faint sounds next door. Unable to sleep for a long time. My cell phone screen would occasionally light up with long-winded texts of repentance and accusations from Marcus. I glanced at them once, then blocked all his contact information. The world was quiet, but the void in my heart still needed filling. The next morning, I rose early. Walking out of the room, I found Arthur already in the kitchen, the aroma of coffee wafting through the air. He was wearing a simple white t-shirt and sweatpants, his tall frame facing away from me. You're up? Coffee's in the pot. Toast is in the toaster. Help yourself. He didn't turn around. His voice husky with sleep. His casual tone surprisingly eased some of my tension. I walked over and poured myself some coffee. What are your plans for today? He asked, placing fried eggs onto a plate. First, visit my mom and dad to explain everything, so they don't worry. Then, go back to Marcus's and my old home to move my things out. I kept my tone deliberately flat as I said the last sentence. Arthur turned, handing me a plate. Need any help? I looked at him. His eyes were sincere, devoid of pity, only a confirmation of we're allies. No, some things I need to handle myself. I took the plate. Thanks for breakfast. You're welcome, roommate. A faint smile seemed to touch the corner of his lips. Visiting my parents' house. I was, as expected, met with a lengthy lecture, but seeing that my mental state was stable, and with Arthur calling them later to reassure them, they finally sighed and accepted reality. Then, I drove to the place I had once called home. Using my key to open the door, a familiar scent enveloped me, tinged with a lingering sadness. I didn't hesitate. I pulled out the large suitcase I'd prepared and began packing my clothes, books, and work files. Anything had given me, any item tied to our shared memories, I left behind. Just as I was struggling to move a heavy box of books, the sound of a key turning in the lock came from the door. Marcus rushed in, his eyes bloodshot, clearly having been awake all night. Grace, you're finally back. His voice was full of frantic joy, but seeing the suitcase at my feet, his expression instantly soured. What are you doing? As you can see, I'm moving my things out. I didn't stop what I was doing. I won't allow it. He stepped forward, grabbing my wrist with considerable force. This is our home. We can pretend yesterday never happened. We can start over. I forcefully shook his hand off, my gaze icy. Marcus, need I remind you? We're married now, to different people. That's fake. It doesn't count, he growled. Arthur took advantage of the situation. He was the only one who stood up and caught me when everyone else abandoned me. I cut him off, my voice rising. And you? Where were you? You were in the delivery room with your ex-girlfriend, Ally. Marcus tried to explain. I don't care about Ally. I snapped. Your story has nothing to do with me. Now, please leave and stop hindering my packing. Otherwise, I don't mind calling the police. Marcus was stunned by my resolve. He looked at me, his eyes filled with an unfamiliar pain. Grace, you've changed. Yes, I said, zipping up the suitcase, the sound grating. Thanks to you. Dragging the suitcase, I walked towards the door without looking back. As I brushed past Marcus, I stopped, turning my head to give him one last look. Regarding this house, my lawyer will be in touch with you. Goodbye, Marcus. Stepping out that door, the sunlight was a little blinding. I took a deep breath, feeling as if I'd broken free from invisible shackles. By the time I returned to Arthur's apartment, it was already evening. Dragging my exhausted body and the massive suitcase, I opened the door to find Arthur sitting on the living room sofa, seemingly waiting for me. Everything go smoothly? He asked. I nodded. Not wanting to talk much about it, he stood up, walked over, and naturally took the heavy suitcase from my hand. Did you eat? I ordered takeout. Want to eat together? I watched him place my suitcase neatly in the corner, then looked at the steaming food already laid out on the dining table. A strange, long-forgotten warmth quietly spread through my heart. Perhaps this absurd marriage wasn't entirely a dead end. Perhaps this unfamiliar roommate could truly become an ally in my new life. Or even, something more. Life with Arthur as roommates gradually fell into a peculiar rhythm. We each went to work, took turns with chores or ordered takeout, maintained a polite distance, yet shared an unspoken understanding. He started buying my favorite yogurt at the grocery store, and I remembered he took his coffee black. We were like two distinct puzzle pieces, carefully navigating the confined space without clashing. Marcus's harassment had temporarily ceased after Arthur firmly blocked him downstairs a few times and I issued clear legal warnings. But I knew this was just the calm before the storm. It was a weekend, and I was in the living room sorting through the last few boxes of books I'd moved back from my old home when the doorbell rang. Arthur was in his home office working, and I assumed it was a delivery. So I opened the door without much thought. It wasn't a delivery person, but a woman wearing loose postpartum wear. Her face somewhat pale, but her features still hinting at her former charm. She was cradling an infant in a swaddle. It was Ally. My heart plummeted. I instinctively wanted to close the door, but she spoke first. Her voice soft and weak, tinged with a hint of fatigue. Grace, is that right? I'm Ally. I apologize for bothering you so abruptly. My hand on the doorframe tightened. I made no move to let her in, my tone aloof. What do you want? She seemed unprepared for my coldness. She bit her lower lip, and her eyes instantly welled up. I'm here to apologize for what happened on your wedding day. Marcus. He was worried about me and the baby, that's all. I know this caused you a lot of pain, and I'm truly sorry. She spoke, slightly turning sideways, as if to give me a clearer view of the baby in her arms. The baby was tiny, eyes closed, sleeping soundly. I've received your apology. My voice was perfectly even. If that's all, please go. You need rest, and I don't wish to be disturbed. Ally froze. She probably expected me to be hysterical or at least emotionally volatile, instead of this icy calm. Grace. She eagerly stepped half a pace closer. I know you're angry. You hate me, but the baby is innocent. Marcus. He's been in a lot of pain recently. He truly regrets it. You've always been the one he loves. I almost scoffed aloud, again with this routine, putting herself and the child in a vulnerable position, using love and regret for emotional blackmail. Ally. I cut her off, my gaze dropping to the child in her arms, my tone deliberately soft, yet every word clear. First, I don't hate you. You're not worth my hate. Second, whether Marcus regrets anything or who he loves is irrelevant to me. Finally, and most importantly, I raised my eyes, meeting hers with a sharp gaze. What happens between you and Marcus is your own mess. Please don't drag me into it, and certainly don't use this child as a bargaining chip. His pain is the consequence of his own choices, and my new life has nothing to do with him, and even less to do with you. Ally's face instantly went ashen. She had likely never encountered a former wife so utterly unyielding. The baby in her arms seemed to sense its mother's distress, stirred restlessly, and let out a weak cry. How can you be so heartless? Ally's voice choked up. We both have children now. That's your child, not my responsibility. I didn't back down. If you and Marcus can't even manage your own relationship and child, and need to come to me seeking validation and forgiveness, it only proves that you are not only selfish, but also utterly incompetent. My words were like an icy dagger, tearing open her pitiful facade. Just then, Arthur must have heard the commotion at the door, for he walked out of his home office. He came to my side, naturally put his arm around my shoulder, and looked calmly at Ally. Madam, what can I do for my wife? If there's nothing, please don't disturb our peace, he said, wife with utmost naturalness. Ally looked at us, at Arthur's hand on my shoulder, at the invisible aura of alliance between us, and the last trace of color drained from her face. Her lips trembled. She couldn't utter a word. She just clutched the crying baby in her arms, her eyes filled with frustration and a hint of resentment. Please leave, Arthur spoke again, his tone carrying an unmistakable air of dismissal. Ally ultimately said nothing, stumbling, turning, and leaving with the baby. I closed the door and leaned against it, letting out a long breath. My resolve just now had cost me considerable energy. Arthur's hand was still on my shoulder, unmoving. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. I shook my head, turning to look at him. He was watching me, his eyes holding concern, and a hint of admiration? Was I too harsh? I gave a small, wry smile. To say such things to a woman who had just given birth. Arthur, however, shook his head. "No, you simply protected yourself and set clear boundaries. When dealing with people who try to blur boundaries, clarity and firmness are the best weapons. You did very well." His affirmation was like a warm current, quietly seeping into my heart. This time, I didn't rush to remove his hand from my shoulder. Marcus's harassment had temporarily ceased, but this wasn't like him. Unless he was in bigger trouble, or Ally had him tied up, I couldn't afford to wait passively. Defense wasn't my style. Offense was. One evening, Arthur and I were both reading in the living room, the atmosphere a rare quiet. I closed my book and looked at him. "Arthur," I began, "I recall you mentioning you had a friend who runs a consulting firm, whose services are quite extensive." Arthur looked up from his book, his eyes behind his glasses flashing sharply. He immediately understood what I meant. "Yes, they're very professional with background checks and information gathering. Do you need them?" "I need to know the truth about Ally and Marcus over the past 3 years, especially Ally's activities since returning to the country, and the specific details about that child," I stated frankly. "I'll cover the costs." Arthur didn't ask why. He simply nodded. "Okay, I'll contact them. We can discuss the fees later." He paused. "Do you sense something's wrong?" "Intuition," I said, tapping my temple. "Ally's demeanor is off. A woman who just gave birth and stole someone's fiancé shouldn't exude that kind of calculated fragility." Arthur looked thoughtful. "Leave it to me." A few days later, Arthur brought back a thin folder. He didn't hand it directly to me. Instead, he looked at me with a somewhat serious expression. "Grace, the contents might be unpleasant. Are you sure you want to see it?" "Yes." I held out my hand. I'd rather face the brutal truth than remain foolishly in the dark. I opened the folder. The contents were like a cold scalpel, peeling back the carefully constructed facade of Ally and Marcus, layer by layer. The first section was about Ally. She hadn't returned alone and helpless as Marcus claimed. She had been married once abroad, divorced due to financial issues, and had accumulated significant debt. After returning, she quickly latched onto Marcus. Upon learning that Marcus was about to marry me, and that my family was well off, my parents are small business owners, she began subtly approaching him and feigning vulnerability. Most crucially, medical records showed her original due date was a week before the wedding. Yet, she unexpectedly went into early labor on our wedding day. The timing was astonishingly coincidental. Private investigators note, while there are reasons to suspect the possibility of artificially induced premature labor, no direct evidence exists. The second section was about Marcus. He wasn't as innocent or devoted as he appeared. During our wedding preparations, he had repeatedly used overtime and business trips as excuses to meet Ally. He even dipped into our joint savings, intended for our new home, to cover some of Ally's hospital and recovery expenses. Even more ironically, a critical flaw had recently emerged in a significant work project, and he was facing enormous compensation claims. Frantically scrambling for money, utterly overwhelmed. The last section was about the child. An unofficial paternity test report, sample source undisclosed, but with high credibility, showed that Marcus's biological paternity of the child was not established. My fingers gripped the paper, my fingertips icy, but a cold fire ignited in my heart. So that was it. Ally had returned to find a fall guy, clear her debts, and secure a father for her child. Marcus, the fool, was not only blinded by love but also cornered by reality. He needed Ally to offer him the comfort of a home, perhaps even counting on resources Ally might bring back from abroad, which, evidently, didn't exist, and Ally needed his money and status. My wedding became their desperate gambit, a tool to force his hand and divert attention. Marcus's flight on our wedding day wasn't solely about old flame and a life in danger. It was because he was in deep trouble himself. The existence of Ally and her child, which he then believed to be his, became the only truth he could cling to in his chaotic life. And once I decisively switched grooms and toppled his escape route, he faced not only emotional collapse but professional and financial ruin. Ally's urgent apology likely wasn't just to win back Marcus. It was because Marcus, her cash cow, was on the brink of collapse. She needed to quickly stabilize me, or through me, stabilize Marcus, to secure her future livelihood. How ugly. How deplorable. I put down the file, let out a long breath, and looked up at Arthur, who had been waiting quietly. How do you feel? He asked, concern in his eyes, like watching a clumsy farce. I smiled, but the warmth didn't reach my eyes. Now, I have the script. I knew Marcus and Ally wouldn't last long. Marcus's disastrous project needed funding, and Ally needed a permanent meal ticket. They were like anxious, desperate rats on a sinking ship. Sure enough, a week later, the storm hit exactly as I'd anticipated. A local gossip blogger with hundreds of thousands of followers posted a lengthy exposé with a highly inflammatory title, Shocking. The independent who grooms on her day actually a vicious fiancé who her boyfriend's pure to her. The post, written from the perspective of an insider, twisted the truth into a story. My relationship with Marcus had long been broken, but I clung on, coveting his promising future. I had repeatedly humiliated and coerced a pregnant Ally, even verbally provoked Ally before the wedding, causing her to be frightened into premature labor. Marcus, out of humanitarian concern, went to care for her, while I, cruel and ruthless, immediately found a backup groom and staged a wedding day swap, utterly driving Marcus to despair. Now's career was stalled. Ally suffered from postpartum depression. The baby was frail and sickly, and their lives were in utter despair. The post also included several blurry photos of me commuting, subtly implying I was being kept by a sugar daddy. The post rapidly gained traction, and my social media account was flooded with insults. Some even started doxing my workplace. When saw the post, his face instantly darkened. He immediately started a phone call. I'll contact a lawyer, send a cease and desist letter immediately, and pursue legal action. Wait, I said, pressing his hand, surprisingly calm. Let them stir up trouble for a while longer. Grace? Arthur asked, bewildered. Only when they've fully revealed their hand can we truly corner them, I said, looking at him, my eyes cold. They chose the most public way to defame me, so I will use the most public way to nail them to the pillar of shame. I contacted the private investigator and obtained clear scanned copies of several key recordings and transaction records. Then, I logged into my social media account. Instead of an angry rebuttal, I simply posted a concise update. The innocent don't need to prove their purity, but the malicious love to cast aspersions. Tomorrow at 8 p.m., on my live stream, the evidence will speak for itself. The moment this update went live, public opinion instantly polarized. Some accused me of seeking attention, some were eagerly waiting for the drama to unfold, and others began to remain neutral. The next evening at exactly 8 p.m., I sat in my home office, with a minimalist bookshelf as the backdrop. Arthur stood out of frame, giving me a reassuring look. I started the live stream. Immediately, the number of viewers skyrocketed. The live chat comments scrolled rapidly, filled with all sorts of reactions. Without any pleasantries, I went straight to the point. Hello everyone, I'm Grace. Regarding the recent rumors, I will only present the evidence, and you can judge for yourselves. I first displayed the records of Marcus using our joint account to transfer money to Ally, specifically during the period when we were planning our wedding. I ask you, what broken-hearted fiancé uses wedding funds to pay his ex-girlfriend? Next, I played a brief but clear recording, a snippet of Ally's phone call to Marcus a week before the wedding. In it, Ally's voice was tearful. Marcus, I've checked. Giving birth a little early won't significantly affect the baby. You have to be with me when I give birth. Otherwise, how can I feel secure? As for Grace, just come up with any excuse. The live stream exploded. Holy hell! Inducing premature birth? So giving birth on the wedding day was intentional? This woman is terrifying. I watched the scrolling live chat comments and continued by dropping the third bombshell, the key information page of the paternity test report, with private details redacted. This is a report concerning the child's paternity. Mr. Marcus, I regret to inform you that the child for whom you abandoned your wedding, endured public scorn, and even misappropriated funds, has no biological father-son relationship with you. Finally, I presented a concise report provided by the private investigator, detailing Ally's overseas debts and the massive compensation Marcus's project was facing. This is why they were so desperate, staging a drama at the wedding, and then continuously harassing and slandering me afterwards. They needed money, a scapegoat, and an excuse to cover up their own failures and disgrace. My voice remained calm, devoid of tears or anger, only a cold, Factual statement. My stance has always been clear. I have no regard for those who betray me. Those who defame me, I will fight back against. From the moment Marcus left the wedding ceremony, I have had no connection whatsoever with him or Ms. Ali. Today's livestream is a unified and final response to all rumors. All subsequent legal liabilities will be handled by my legal team. I paused, looking into the camera, my gaze clear and resolute. Furthermore, I would like to take this opportunity to officially announce that Arthur and I are now legally married. Our story began with an unexpected turn of events, but in the future, we will write our story together. Thank you to everyone who has shown me concern and support. With that, I decisively ended the livestream. The internet world was turned upside down. Public opinion completely reversed. Those who had just been insulting me now turned their aggression towards Marcus and ally. Terms like freeloader, scheming woman, marriage scammer, and the tables turned on the worst ex-girlfriend quickly surged to the trending topics. Marcus and ally were inundated with phone calls. Their addresses were leaked, and they received countless threats and insults. Marcus's company quickly distanced itself from him. His disastrous project found no one to take over, and he faced massive compensation claims. Ali, along with the child whose paternity remained a mystery, completely vanished from public view, becoming a pariah. They were completely publicly disgraced, and faced a deserved double bankruptcy, both financial and emotional. I turned off the computer, and silence filled the room. Arthur walked over and gently pulled me into his embrace. This time, I didn't stiffen, but relaxed into his arms. "It's over," he said. "Yes," I murmured, closing my eyes. "It's all over." After the live stream storm, the world seemed to be muted. Marcus and ally completely disappeared from our lives, as if they had never existed. The lawyers handled all subsequent legal matters, and the online commotion was gradually replaced by new hot topics. Arthur's and my life returned to peace. But beneath this tranquility, something was quietly changing. We no longer deliberately drew roommate boundaries. His shirts would mix in my laundry basket, and I would naturally take the last piece of meat he wanted from his bowl. Like two planets that had long orbited on their separate paths, we finally entered each other's comfortable gravitational pull. 3 months later, on a beautifully sunny weekend, Arthur drove me to a place I hadn't expected, the beach near the hotel where we held our wedding. The sea breeze brushed my face, carrying a salty, liberating scent. We walked side by side on the sand, leaving 2 winding sets of footprints behind us. "Why did you bring me here?" I asked him. It was too close to the ballroom, a place filled with awkward and chaotic memories. Arthur stopped, facing me, his gaze deep like the ocean before us. "This is where everything wrong ended." He paused, his voice low and clear, "and where everything right began." My heart skipped a beat. "Grace." He said my name with an unprecedented solemnity. "There's something I lied about." I looked at him, not interrupting. "That day in the lounge, you asked me if I would marry you. I said I do. You thought it was out of loyalty as a friend, or pity, or even just an impulse, right?" I nodded silently. "That's what I had always believed." He shook his head, a gentle smile playing on his lips. "No, it was long planned, a dream fulfilled. I've liked you since before Marcus even knew you. It's just that back then, you only had eyes for him." I was stunned, and many overlooked details flashed through my mind. He was always there when I needed help. The hidden tenderness in his gaze when he looked at me, his clumsy attempts to comfort me after Marcus and I argued. I had originally intended to keep these feelings hidden forever. He continued, his gaze earnest. "But that day, I saw you standing there, in your wedding dress, like a goddess abandoned yet unwilling to bow your head. I couldn't bear it. I couldn't bear to see you treated that way, and even less to see you face that mess alone. So when you asked me, I knew it was fate's only, and last, chance for me. I had to seize it." The sea breeze tousled his hair, yet his eyes were incredibly firm and clear. "This marriage, for you, began with an accident and revenge. But for me, it was a dream come true. I know the way we started was terrible, but I want to ask you, give me a chance for us to truly begin, not as an act, not under contract, but as Arthur and Grace, to start anew." He finished speaking, then simply looked at me, quietly awaiting my verdict. There were no flowery words, no romantic gestures, just a clumsy yet sincere confession, but this held more power than any love poem. It explained all my past doubts and illuminated all the ambiguous feelings between us. I looked into his eyes, where the clear blue sea and sky were reflected, along with my own image. The last lingering shard of ice in my heart, a remnant of the past, melted completely in that moment, flowing into a warm ocean current. I reached out and gently took his somewhat cool fingers. Arthur, I smiled, my eyes welling up a little. Haven't we already begun? When exactly did it begin? Was it the day he made me breakfast? The day he stood in front of Marcus and declared, "This is my wife"? Or the day he unhesitatingly supported my search for the truth, standing by my side every time I needed him? It didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that when I broke free from old shackles and bravely stepped towards a new life, he was there, not as a savior, but as a companion. He paused, then immense joy and relief washed over his eyes, as if he had finally received long-awaited sunlight. He squeezed my hand tightly, his grip strong, as if holding a treasured item he had recovered. Yes, he smiled, his bright smile dispelling all past shadows. We started long ago. Seagulls circled and cried overhead, and waves repeatedly washed over the beach, taking away old traces and bringing new gifts. I squeezed his hand back, looking towards the distant horizon where the sea met the sky. Marcus, Ali, that absurd wedding. They all became distant, blurred background noise. And my new life, Arthur's and my story, truly began at this moment. Clear, bright, and full of strength. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any thoughts about this story, feel free to share them in the comments section. Here is Roses and Love, sharing stories about marriage and women every day. See you tomorrow.